New head coach Mike Brown just sat down for his introductory press conference.
Our goal, starting with Mr. Dolan, to Leon, to the players, all the way down to the fans, is to build a sustainable winning culture that produces championships. That's why I'm here. I'm fortunate to know what it takes to create that success. It was a no-brainer for me. You know, the league is the league, and there's always going to be ebbs and flows in terms of how the hiring and firing process goes, and you just embrace it and you keep moving forward.
Is there a reverence whenever Mike Brown speaks? Welcoming in our panel, our senior writer Ramona Shelburne, our senior writer Brian Windhorst, and I'm so glad we have our do-it-all analyst Monica McNutt here in Los Angeles as well. I'm glad we have you here today, Monica, because amongst your 50-11 jobs, one of them is spending time covering the New York Knicks. What do you think of what we just heard from Mike Brown and his fit here as the new head coach?
Well, I think that he said all the right things for sure, and I buy them as sincere, Malika. When you look at this team, these guys have great personalities. They've obviously had great success this past season. There's not a ton of tweaking that needs to be done. Yes, you mentioned it in your toss, getting over the hump, that will be on the shoulders of Mike Brown. But in terms of having an organization that is already committed to winning, that has been well established. And I think when I look at Mike Brown's resume, one of the things that jumps out, and we talked about this a bunch last week in New York, are the 2 Coach of the Year awards separated by decades, right? And so to me, it indicates that he's been able to adapt to this generation of both coaches and the style of the NBA game that has changed over time.
And he has won, maybe not as a head coach, but as an assistant coach. He's been a champion. He's been around the stars of the stars, the Steph Currys, the LeBron James. But when you're looking at a roster that is largely the same here, Ramona, and it's a huge head coaching shakeup, after the Knicks made it all the way to the conference finals, the bar of success, it's pretty freaking high.
So let's remind people, though, that when they did get rid of Tom Thibodeau, they met with a lot of the key players. There was interviews with 7 or 8 of the key players right before they made that decision. And so I think they're pretty confident knowing that Mike Brown will be well received here and a new voice will be well received. And I think probably his best attribute here is just his flexibility. You know, one of the things that happened with the Knicks, they had one of the best 2-man combinations in offense early in the season with Jalen Brunson and Karl Towns. That pick and roll game worked so well. Then opponents change things up a little bit. They would put Josh Hart's man onto Jalen Brunson, and they would dare Josh Hart to shoot. And the Knicks just never had a counter for it. And you saw that when they got to the playoffs, they were just very one note. And Mike Brown is a very collaborative guy. He's worked in a lot of situations. I first got to know him in Los Angeles when he worked with Kobe Bryant following Phil Jackson. And so this is a big job, the New York Knicks job, but this man has had some of the biggest jobs in sports already.
And he didn't mince words, right? He said, I am here to produce championships. He addressed that head on, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, he's not going to like me saying this, but he has now been coaching in the NBA in 4 different decades. His career started in the NBA back in the 90s. And if you, like Ramona said, like, look who he's worked under. He's worked under Greg Popovich. He's worked under Steve Kerr. He's worked under Rick Carlisle. He's coached LeBron James. He's coached Kobe Bryant. He has seen a lot of things. He's been to the finals, I believe, with 3 different organizations, once as a head coach. He's had a lot of success coaching in the East in a slow-down system. I've watched him coach teams that have won playoff games where they didn't break 80 points. He's coached the fastest-paced offense in the league, which he was with the Kings 2 years ago. So what the Knicks are doing here is they are hiring a coach with a big array of experience because they have a lot of things in place. What they need, as Ramona said, is the ability to have options. They need to be able to play different ways when they get in the playoffs so that when a team tries to impose a game plan on them, they can maneuver around a little bit. Some of that is on the front office, and they've added some players to their roster this year to give him more tools than Tom Thibodeau had before him. But some of this is going to be on Mike Brown to use the talent that he's got in his roster, get them to branch out a little bit so they're a little bit harder to play in a playoff series.
And one small thing, but I find it fascinating, he has experience coaching a lefty point guard, right? You're coming from coaching De'Aaron Fox, and now you get to coach Jalen Brunson. I'm curious, Monica, to see how that plays out on the floor.
Yeah, I think that's going to be fantastic. Jalen is so versatile, though, and I think he shoots with his right hand, though, although he is left-hand dominant. Look, not only the basketball part of it, but I think the the IQ and the team elements of it all, right? In terms of being a manager of personalities, that's something that I think is also going to be hugely important to this group. Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns, those guys are pretty set in who they are. It's the rest of that roster. The creativity extends, to me, beyond just the basketball of it all, but creating a true sense of buy-in up and down the roster.
They do have the best odds to beat the Oklahoma City Thunder, so everyone has high expectations.
Wow, they do. Goodness.
Everybody has high expectations of the New York Knicks here. Many of us, though, we've been away for the holiday, right? Some barbecue, maybe a little bit of pool time, but NBA
all of those.
teams, they were still bringing the fireworks, right? Teams have been active here in Los Angeles. Shams reported early yesterday that the Clippers, the Jazz, and the Heat agreed to a trade. It sends Norm Powell to Miami, John Collins to the Clippers, and then Kevin Love, Kyle Anderson, and a 2027 Clippers second-round pick, all to Utah. Powell, remember, he was a borderline all-star. He averaged a career high just under 22 points a game last season, and this got some reaction from Kevin Love, who's become the king of social media, by the way. I was waiting for what he was going to say.
That's funny.
But this is how we weighed in. He said, I never thought I'd be a math problem. Welcome to the NBA. I guess welcome to the NBA indeed, Brian. What's your biggest takeaway when you're looking at this three-team deal?
Well, the reason Kevin said that, just so you know, is because he had to be included in this deal for salary purposes.
Right.
And the Heat are thrilled with what they got in this deal. They had been looking for a way to upgrade the talent on their roster, and to be able to basically get John Collins from the Jazz, and then flip him to the Clippers for Norm Powell. That is a big upgrade to their backcourt. Norm Powell is coming off of a career season. His steady improvement in the mid part of his career has been terrific. This is definitely the type of move that in an Eastern Conference that frankly is banged up and is devoid of talent. This kind of talent influx is huge for the Heat. And the Clippers make a big move here. They have added a lot to their front court over the last 2 weeks, signing Brook Lopez to be Ivica Zubac's backup, and now adding John Collins, a frontline power forward in the last year of his contract. You assume he's going to be motivated to have a big season.
Man, Wendy, repost, retweet, heavy on the what does this mean for the Miami Heat, y'all. Like, when I saw this going down, I'm like, huh? So I just go through this roster tentatively, right? Like, Norman Powell, I am in on that dude. I don't think last year was a fluke. Certainly it could be one of his career years, but I think he's in place to be able to duplicate that sort of productivity the next couple of seasons. But if you give me Adebayo, Powell, Hero, Wiggins, and Ware, Kel'el Ware, I still think is a little bit of a gem in the league in terms of folks maybe not knowing how dynamic he is at 7 foot. But in the East, that is sort of open outside of the odds that you just mentioned for the New York Knicks. Like, that's not a bad starting lineup. You sprinkle in a little bit of Heat culture, if I may. And I don't know, you kind of got to see what can happen down in South Beach.
The backcourt is a little crowded. I'm curious if they're done making moves here. But since we're in Los Angeles and Clippers fans are curious, they desperately needed a power forward. That's something that last season you're kind of looking around and saying, all right, Kawhi cannot be taking on all of these minutes, right? Ramona, are they done? How are they feeling? If the East is wide open, the West is crowded.
Well, I don't think a team as smart as the Clippers front office would leave themselves bare in the starting shooting guard position if they didn't have a pretty good feeling that there might be a pretty good shooting guard becoming available via the buyout market fairly soon, and that's Bradley Beal. So I think you should regard the Clippers as one of the favorites for Bradley Beal if he is indeed bought out by the Phoenix Suns, and that comes to fruition as we've all been expecting for a while here. And if you're Brad Beal and you look up and you go, wow, I can play next to James Harden and stand out there and shoot threes, and I don't have to be the point guard anymore. I think that's a great fit for him. I know the Warriors have some interest in Beal. There's a lot of other teams that would have interest in him, but the Clippers have done a good job. It hurts them to lose Norman Powell.
Right.
I know it really hurt them to let go of him, but he was eligible for an extension. They have a well-chronicled discipline about not extending people beyond next year. They're going to have all this cap space. I don't know what they're going to do with it, but they are sticking to their plan, and so that's why they were trading Norman Powell and not extending.
Keeping that flexibility as well as being a team that wants to contend now. We saw how well, even though it was a loss, we saw how well they went up against some of the West's best last year. All right, we've hit on 2 of the teams of a 3-team trade, but if we have Brian Windhorst and we have the Jazz involved, we've got to ask Brian, what's going on in Utah? We got to hit the 3rd team here.
Well, what's going on in Utah is they're basically dumping all of their veterans. They bought out Jordan Clarkson. They traded Colin Sexton. Now moving out John Collins. Kevin Love, maybe don't look for housing yet. He probably may be able to get himself free. And that leaves, what about Lauri Markkanen? Now, Markkanen signed a massive contract extension before last season. And, from what I know in talking to people around him, his expectation was that he knew the Jazz were rebuilding, but he was expecting them to start powering up. What it looks like they're doing here is powering to be chasing A.J. DeBansa in the draft next year. Right. This team is very young, and so Markkanen didn't have his best year last year. I don't know if his value is as high as it was a year ago when there were teams like the Golden State Warriors knocking on the Jazz's door. But I got to wonder what the future of Markkanen, he's got a bunch of money on his contract, like around $190 million over the next 4 years. It would not be a clean and simple trade. But I got to wonder if the Jazz aren't going to be taking some calls, if not now, certainly into this season, because their actions indicate they're not building towards a team around Lauri Markkanen. They're building around their young players and potentially their future draft picks going into next year.
Right, and based on when he signed that contract, I believe he's eligible to be moved now. They don't have to wait any longer to different deadlines. They can start looking at that now. Walker Kessler as well, I'm very curious. He fits the timeline maybe a little bit better, but I know there's a whole lot of teams that would be very, very interested if the Utah Jazz were picking up the phone. That's today's segment of What's Going On in Utah. Coming up here on NBA Today, Deandre Ayton, he will speak this afternoon for the first time since joining the Lakers. So we assess his fit in the purple and gold. How will he make Luka's life easier? And does LA have another move coming? Plus, a whole lot of guard news, right? Our insiders have the latest on Chris Paul's announcement, Hallie's recovery, and Bradley Beal's potential buyout. There's a long list of suitors. And June's moves, they're officially official. So which team made the biggest summer splash so far? We've got a live report on the new look league landscape. Say that a couple times fast. That's next. Start in Orlando. Paolo Banchero agreed to a 5-year, $239 million max rookie contract extension. That number will be even higher if he makes All-NBA next season. So, Brian, what should we know about this deal?
Well, this is a huge move for the #1 overall pick from a couple of years ago. A great move for the Magic, who lock in their core. If you look at Franz Wagner and Jalen Suggs. The interesting thing about this, Malika, is that he got a player option in the 5th year. That had become almost extinct over the last 3 or 4 seasons. After last decade, we saw a number of players who got that player option. Guys like Donovan Mitchell, Paul George, Kyrie Irving, didn't stay with their team.
That's certainly something to keep an eye on. Let's head to Indiana. Tyrese Halliburton recovering from the Achilles tear he suffered in the NBA Finals, but this is good to see. He made it to a fever game on Saturday. Now, Pacers president Kevin Pritchard, he confirmed Tyrese will not play next season. So how is his team positioned, Monica, come his return in 2026?
Well, I know we're talking 2026, but I'm still not counting them completely out for 2025. But in 2026, I think you look at this roster, you look at a guy like Jarris Walker, you look at a guy like Thomas Bryant. Yeah. Obviously, if Tyrese Halliburton can come back and duplicate the success this past season, but here's the thing. This team is going to play with speed. With or without him, they will only be better at playing with if he is not available by 2026, but they'll be great once he returns.
Chris Paul is a free agent. He told Jamel Hill how much longer he intends to play.
At the most, a year. I just finished my 20th season, which is a blessing in itself.
All right, so at the most a year, that means, do you believe this is it? Is that what he's saying?
I think this is it, and I think he will find a home. It's going to come, later than other free agents here. But last week on this show, I talked about I thought the Phoenix Suns would be the most likely landing place for him. I'm going to expand that or maybe amend it and say I think the Los Angeles Clippers make a lot of sense for him now. Now that they've traded Norman Powell, they need an extra reinforcement in the backcourt. And Bradley Beal's out there, but why not have both?
Bradley Beal and Chris Paul. All right, we'll definitely be keeping an eye on the Clippers. Elsewhere in Los Angeles, the Lakers added a much-needed big, Deandre Ayton. He cleared waivers, signed a 2-year deal. Ayton is expected to speak to reporters for the first time as a member of the Lakers this afternoon. But in a statement released by Lakers PR, Rob Pelinka, he said, quote, DeAndre's size, his mobility, athleticism will both allow paint scoring and paint protection. DeAndre's playoff experience as a starter on an NBA Finals team will also align with our ultimate Lakers championship aspirations. So again, we're going to be hearing from Deandre Ayton a little bit later this afternoon. But Brian, how do you feel about his fit just looking at this current Lakers roster?
Well, the Lakers needed a center. They had $8 million to play with. That was their limitation. And they get a guy in his prime who has put up terrific numbers, who is going to be highly motivated. The contract he signed has an out after this year, which means that we're going to see potentially a Deandre Ayton that we haven't seen in a while. He signed that contract with the Suns. He was salty from the moment that he signed it because he had to go get an offer sheet from the Pacers, and he just wasn't the same player over the last few years. All you can ask for from the Lakers when the situation they were in was to get a motivated, high production player at that price. They did. Is he a perfect player? Of course not. He wouldn't have been bought out if he was a perfect player. But the Lakers are in a situation of need. Deandre Ayton is in a situation of need. We'll have to see how they work together.
It feels like Luka Doncic's opinion here, Ramona, may be the most important, particularly because we have seen Luka thrive when he has a rim-running big. I'm not sure I necessarily describe DeAndre Ayton that way. However, he was a part of maybe the most famous alley-oop of the last couple of years, the Valley-oop, right?
We were there, yeah.
And so Luka is looking for a partner, a tandem. Can DeAndre Ayton be that? I guess he has to be.
He's right now he is. Yeah. I don't know if this is the long-term partnership, but he has the opportunity. And obviously, Luka was consulted on this. They have the same representation in Bill Duffy's agency and Neiman Namakia, and there's a synergy there, right? They checked in with Luka. Obviously, he was for this move, and so that's all you need to know here. Like, if Luka's on board, then that's what they got. And I don't know if this is going to be the long-term fit for the Lakers, but this is a make-good contract. And DeAndre Ayton had a lot of success. He was a starting center on that Phoenix Suns team that made the finals, and that was when he had Chris Paul in his ear, when he had Devin Booker in his other ear, and he was in a very structured environment with Monty Williams as the head coach. Well, Luka's on one ear, LeBron's on the other ear, JJ Redick will be in his ear. I think this is a good environment for him to succeed, and on that make-good kind of contract.
I think you're right in all the.
You don't sound as convinced.
Well, we have talked ad nauseum, and I often have disagreed with the way that Luka has been discussed in terms of needing to turn over the leaf as far as his conditioning and taking it to the next level. DeAndre Ayton got to be able to respond here. But here's what I think is beautiful about this for him. He doesn't even necessarily have to be the same version of himself that he was in Phoenix, right? Luka threw 50 lobs last year. That's 7th in the league in terms of total. That's easy. Yeah. DeAndre Ayton is a bona fide NBA player. He can catch the ball, he can finish at the rim, right? He doesn't even necessarily have to go back or turn the hands of time back in the other way. Now, to your point, it is a tremendous opportunity, Ramona, because if he does, and this is a short-term contract, he's going to look like a prize to the rest of the league.
He's got to see it as an opportunity, though.
And that's something that I think the structure of his contract, he should be motivated to do that. And he brings something different than maybe other bigs that Luka Doncic has played with. He's really efficient in the mid-range, shot 47% from 8 to 16 feet away from the basket. So he provides a little bit of something different here for Los Angeles. They need this to work. They know that this was the deficiency in their roster in a lot of ways last year. They let some different folks walk. It made some people in the organization feel a certain type of way. They need this to work. DeAndre Ayton needs this to work, and that tends to be the type of partnership that could be fruitful. Again, DeAndre Ayton will speak for the first time as a member of the Lakers later today. Still to come, did that edit for the Rockets? Sick. Kevin Durant will officially wear number 7 for Houston after the league record 7-team trade was official over the weekend. Whoever had to do that bookkeeping, I hope you get a little vacation. The Rockets, the Suns, the Wolves, the Warriors, the Hawks, the Nets, and the Lakers. They were all involved in the blockbuster deal that ended up with 6 players, the draft rights to 7 2025 picks, 7 future picks, $3.3 million in total cash getting swapped. Now that the dust has settled, though, KD, he jumped onto social media and he posted in part this: "My time in Phoenix has come to an end. All of these stops along the journey, they've really impacted me in a positive way. It's all a family that I'm grateful to be a part of, no matter what. I truly believe this NBA is one big community. Much love to Arizona. Houston, can't wait." And Rockets general manager Rafael Stone, he spoke yesterday about what KD brings to H-Town.
I mean, he's Kevin Durant. You know, I think he's really good. He's super efficient. He had a great year last year. So, I mean, he's obviously not 30 anymore, but he hasn't really fallen off. And we just think, we think he has a chance to really be impactful for us. Our goal is definitely to win a championship, but I don't know about the window opening or closing or whatever else. I think it's way too early to talk about championships, other than, for obvious reasons, that's our goal.
I'm excited to see Houston have KD, but I get even more excited when I get to say howdy to our NBA reporter, Tim McMahon. Howdy, partner. Tim, we just heard GM Rafael Stone. He said it's way too early to talk about championships, but Kevin Durant, he's going to be 37 when the season gets underway. So do the Rockets really believe this, or is this a little bit of the OKC didn't say the word championship at their media day last season?
Howdy, Malika. Listen, it's way too early. Oh, you like that? It's way too early for Rafael Stone to sit up there at a press conference and pound his chest and plan a championship parade. This trade obviously was made to open up a potential championship window for the Houston Rockets. This is a team that was a 2 seed last year, despite being mediocre at best offensively, despite having a glaring void when it came to that go-to perimeter scorer. Jalen Green, talented, but he was consistently inconsistent, flashes of brilliance, but peaks and valleys. Kevin Durant, you know who he is. He has been a certified bucket since you were in elementary school, Malika. He's still one of the most efficient volume scorers that we've ever seen in this game. They're still big, they're still tough, they're still deep. They're going to be a dominant rebounding team, an elite defensive team, and now they have a Hall of Famer instead of a hope he can as the go-to guy.
Not a hope
yes, the Rockets are realistic championship contenders with this trade of Kevin Durant, and that's the whole reason the deal happened.
A hope he can as a noun, McMahon, is pretty wild.
I'm going to be absolutely. Thank you for that.
Quite effective. Look, I have a ton of respect for leadership needing to be patient and strike all the right notes. But to me, this sounded like scare money don't make no money. To your point, it is obvious what this team is trying to do right now. And I think the way you maybe dance around it artfully, if you want to do the PR thing, is you look at the steps Kevin Durant has taken in his career, and it has never not been about putting the team in the best position to win. And then, of course, you do the dance about the rest of our team and trusting Ime Udoka and how we're going to grow this season and put our best foot forward. But yeah, everybody know what time it is when you add this guy to a team that was number 2 in the West. And I actually think that being bold and affirming what you're trying to do on a daily basis, particularly for those young guys, helps you stay locked in on the prize.
But OKC just did that, and it worked out for them.
Yeah, but they didn't have that Kevin Durant veteran there. They didn't have a Fred VanVleet. I mean, I guess you could maybe put Caruso in that category, but he's not old. He's just older than them.
30.
Right. He's just older than them. And so to me, this is when you go out and go get Kevin Durant. They had this well-chronicled decision to say, I want to keep this young team together. We want to grow. And then they lost to the Warriors in the first round.
And what did they lose with? They lost with not having a go-to guy down the stretch of those games to put the ball in their hand and say, go get us a bucket. That's really what we need. Now you have the best scorer, the greatest scorer in my eyes of all time on your team in Kevin Durant, Brian.
Yeah, so there's some nuance here, okay? I know that it's hard always to see nuance. I don't think that the Rockets looked at this situation and said, now is the time we're going to go for it. But they loved the price on Kevin Durant. They thought, if we can get him for this price, we're going to get him, not because we think we're only going to be contenders for the next 2 years. And again, there's nuance within that. I don't want to imply that they got him for cheap. They gave us some quality players and the number 10 draft pick, Maluach, who could end up being a really good player for Phoenix, but they really liked the price here. And so that, I think, has to be considered. They went and got Durant because he was the best thing they could have ever gotten for what they gave up. But I also think that they have learned from Oklahoma City. Sam Presti, what did he come out and say 2 years ago? We've got to finish our breakfast. They won 57 games and had the #1 overall seed. And then he was like, let's talk about lunch. So I think Rafael is very savvy. He's done a really good job building this team. He does not want to put parameters on it, but he also couldn't say no to getting Kevin Durant at that value.
Right, so maybe Rafael now will say, let's just finish our brunch, and then we can kind of go on.
Bro, if y'all don't go out there and try to win a championship, stop playing. Let's go.
I mean, they're going to go out there. They're going to go out there. They're going to go out there and try to win a championship. In this Western Conference, you mentioned it, Monica, they were the number 2 seed already. You add Kevin Durant, what does that equate?
Come on
we
now.
can all sort of see what the tea leaves are spelling here. It isn't that difficult. The spotlight certainly is going to be on Kevin Durant and the Rockets next season, but the summer spotlight, it's currently on top 5 pick Ace Bailey. He debuted after all that jazz for the Jazz in Salt Lake Summer League, and here's how it went down against the Memphis Grizzlies here. Early in the second quarter, Jazz trail by 14. Bailey grabs a rebound, steps back out.
Okay.
One-legged shot, off to a pretty good start.
Dirk Nowitzki kind of shot.
Trail by 9 here. Isaiah Collier pushes it up. Ooh. Bailey, the vicious alley-oop, showing off some of his athleticism that we talked so much about during the draft. And then later in the third, Bailey fighting for the rebound here and throwing it down with authority.
He told us all through the draft process that rebounding is the thing he hears from his aunt and mom when he's playing ball.
And clearly he was hearing it here and also feeling it hitting the 3 18.7 rebounds in his second Summer League game. And while Bailey balled out last night, it was number 3 pick VJ Edgecombe that stole the show over the weekend in Salt Lake. The Sixers lottery pick poured in a game-high 28 points, highlighted by some rim-rattling dunks here as well. He grabbed 10 rebounds, dished out 4 assists. He swatted 2 shots in his debut with Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. Excited here for what they're seeing from the number 3 pick. Tim, you were in the building to watch both Edgecombe and Bailey here. Your biggest takeaway watching those two was what?
I mean, the takeaway with VJ Edgecombe is this guy is going to step into the NBA as an elite athlete, even by NBA standards. And he didn't have the most productive year at Baylor where the floor's all clogged up. But if you watched him with the Bahamas, where he was playing on a team with Deandre Ayton, with Eric Gordon, with Buddy Hield, a team that came 1 win away from that itty-bitty island's first Olympic bid.
Yeah.
There were times where he was the best player on that team, where he was the guy who was getting crunch time shots. He's not scared of the moment, and you talk about a turbo button, the ability to elevate. He can get to his spots. He can get shots when he wants. He's really impressive. Listen, when I was there Saturday night, it was not like an overwhelming performance by Ace Bailey. He struggled offensively, 8 points on 3 of 13 shooting, but the Jazz were pleased by what they saw, and that's because he competed. He played hard defensively. You could see 6'8", 210. It was Will Hardy told me, NBA athlete, NBA body, closing big gaps defensively, competing, rebounding. He sat for 6 minutes of crunch time, came back in the game, and got the biggest board of the game. He was considered kind of painted as a diva during the pre-draft process. That has not been the guy they've seen since he showed up to Salt Lake City.
Yeah, they're seeing sort of all of the things that we knew would make him such an asset in the NBA. So we've seen a couple of the top picks here. We will have to wait, though, until Thursday to see the number 1 pick, Cooper Flagg, make his Summer League debut. That'll be out in Vegas. But earlier today, he spoke at Mavs practice.
I think, Coach Shire trusted me a lot last year, and I handled it a lot. I didn't bring it up a ton, but, in the half court, I handled it a lot and, set up a lot of different actions. So I think it's something I can do at a high level, so I'm excited to just, experiment and do some new things.
He's experimenting. He's doing some new things. He's keeping the goatee. Tim, how do you see Flagg adapting with the Mavs here?
Well, listen, Jason Kidd's going to treat Cooper Flagg a lot like he did Giannis Antetokounmpo when J. Kidd got to Milwaukee and put the ball in Giannis's hands and basically said, spread your wings, show us what you can do, and the things you can't do, let's jump over those hurdles. Let's get past those things. Let's test you and really grow. And it's different circumstances. That Milwaukee team was young. They were in a rebuild where Cooper Flagg obviously joins a very veteran-heavy Dallas Mavericks team, a team with some future Hall of Famers. Of course, one of those future Hall of Famers, Kyrie Irving, recovering from a torn ACL. He's not going to play for at least the first half of the season. So there is a void in terms of facilitating, playmaking. Jason Kidd wants to really give Cooper Flagg a chance to prove that he can help fill that void, if not be the primary guy as their playmaker from the get-go. And that's really what this Summer League is going to be about for Cooper Flagg and the Mavericks.
We get to see Cooper on Thursday in Las Vegas right here on ESPN, taking on the Los Angeles Lakers and Bronny James. It may just be July, Tim, but there is plenty of action to catch up on. So let's check out NBA Today's Big Three, our highlights here from around the association and more. We're going to start with Bronny James. Speaking of the Lakers, taking on the Heat in the California Summer League Classic here. This is early in the first quarter. Watch this, Monica. Bronny.
Okay. Elevate.
His dad there.
Yeah, this is a great finish. Terrific display of athleticism, reading the defense, had the advantage, full control.
He would end up with 10 points in that game. And then coming in at number 2 here, Ramona, Judah Mintz, Salt Lake City Summer League. The Thunder taking on the 76ers here early in the first quarter. Judah Mintz with the crossover. You got to make that. He does. We got to see that crossover one more time.
Goodness.
Man.
Slide to the left. He had 21 points in this one. The Thunder did go on to win the game, however, 89-76. And then at number 1, a potential future Summer League participant one day, maybe. We got Chef Cannon Curry,
He's
the
what,
young
3?
chef.
The announcement fans and NBA franchises all over have been sweating about. Let's now send it to Jim Gray in Greenwich, Connecticut with the King.
The answer to the question everybody wants to know.
In this fall, man, it's very tough. And this fall, I'm going to take my talents to South Beach and join the Miami Heat.
And with that very very famous decision.
Very.
Very famous. The Heatles were born. So what better time now to relive a little LeBron Miami era with some top of the top. First up, we got top kings of the court. This is 2010. Remember this, Ramona? LeBron shoots over the backboard as the shot clock expires.
Oh my goodness, that's like my horse shot.
How? You have a horse shot like that?
Yeah, but I don't make it very often.
We're going to be playing some horse after the show. We go to 2011 here. Oh. Ooh. Look at that pass. We're actually
eyes in the back of his head.
In 2013, the NBA Finals, LeBron blocks Thiago Splitter. Ooh.
God, it's okay to shoulder that way.
Next up, we got top winning time here. This is 2012. Dwayne Wade throwing the alley-oop to LeBron versus the Bulls. Soaring through the air.
God, it's like he just jumped over him. He just jumped over.
How do you feel about the black Miami Heat jerseys? This is 2013.
That's pretty good.
Dunking all over rookie there.
Good try, Ben McLemore. Good try on that charge.
Last one, top ruling time. This is the 2012 NBA Finals. LeBron taking it over the Thunder in Game 5 to win his first NBA title here.
We don't have one of him dunking on Perk? No.
And then we go to 2013, the Eastern Conference Finals. He made it a game. Little game-winning layup there.
The Pacers always ran into
tormented the Pacers. Tormented that franchise. And then 2013, the NBA Finals, taking one over the Spurs in Game 7 to win his second NBA title. So LeBron, of course, he won the first 2 of his 4 rings in Miami after making the decision, taking his talents to South Beach. Brian, where were you? Where were you when the decision happened? A little Brian story time. I always look forward to this.
I was in my basement, but you know, the thing about it is there's 3 things I want to tell you about Decision Day. One, they raised millions of dollars for Boys and Girls Clubs that night, and they just botched the rollout of that announcement so poorly. They didn't tell people that clearly enough, and so it's lost to history. That's one. One of the reasons, you want to know why? Because when they were supposed to be rehearsing it, Kanye West showed up where LeBron was hanging out before the game unannounced, distracted LeBron. Not that that was the reason, but that was one of the crazy things that happened that day.
Goodness.
Okay.
Number 2, when the Cavs were informed of LeBron's decision, it was Rich Paul, who was not even LeBron's agent yet, who called the Cavs. They respected him for doing that, and that formed the basis of the relationship that helped LeBron come back 4 years later. That's important to remember. And when did the Cavs start getting LeBron James back? They got him back the next day, because what nobody remembers is after that Dan Gilbert letter, which was, you know, on fire.
Literally.
Dan Gilbert and Chris Grant, the general manager, came together and did a sign and trade. They actually traded LeBron to Miami, got over that emotion, and they got assets back that helped the Cavs later on build the team. Part of those assets were used to trade for Kevin Love. So the decision, there was a lot of things that happened that night beyond taking my talents, both on LeBron's side and the Cavs side, that ended up being very important years later.
Yeah, it's funny how all of those little details sometimes get lost.
Completely lost.
To history.
The Cavs current guard, Donovan Mitchell, wasn't he in the room, Brian? That night in Connecticut at the Boys and Girls Club?
Which is just such a
And they told all the kids to be quiet. So they didn't applaud, which was made the whole environment even worse.
Yeah.
Okay, well, maybe now there's some lessons that have been learned from this history. But seeing LeBron's decision and seeing that it was 15 years ago, we thought, since there are still conversations swirling here about LeBron James, which is amazing that turning 41 years old, we're still talking about what is he going to do next. I want to end the show by playing a little bit of fill in the blank here.
Okay.
LeBron will finish his career blank. Monica McNutt, I'm going to go to you first.
Listen, y'all know who I work for when I'm not here. The other biggest market, the biggest market in the country. Good New York. Why not? Just throw it out there.
Okay, we're just throw it out there. Why not? All right.
The Rich Paul, Leon Rose.
Yeah, come on. Why not?
You know what, guys? I don't know. Every other day I have a different feeling. Some days I wake up and I go, you know what? It would be a book ending if he just went back to Cleveland. But I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think he's going to be with the Lakers this year. I think that's it. I think it's LA. He's building a big mansion here in LA. His prices at Arizona. It just makes the most sense.
I agree with you. I'm going to twist that a little on its head. I'm going to say he's going to finish his career in Springfield.
Okay. Okay.
Finish his career in
That's guaranteed to be correct.
Yeah. It is Springfield, Brian. What you got?
did you see the video over the weekend? I think he's finishing his career on the 18th hole. Now, you may say that this swing that he posted over the weekend looked bad, but I'm going to tell you, after what I saw, the last time I saw him swing a golf club was like 10 or 12 years ago in Miami. This is major improvement.
Yeah.
Give him another decade. It might be senior tour time. Of course, he'll be in like his mid-50s and past the prime for the senior tour. But this is much better. This is improvement.
Don't put it past LeBron.
The ball's in the air.
I'm terrible at golf, so
I'm not sure about smoking the cigar.
Brian, though,
I think put the cigar down while you're in the backswing.
Brian can play. We cannot. Steph Curry was encouraging him to come over to the golf side, the side that he has been on for quite some time. And who knows, depending how long LeBron continues to play, if this is his last season or the next season, we don't know quite yet. But he might have a little bit more time to work on that swing. It's also the 10-year anniversary of the banana boat for anyone who was wondering.
I know where I was, right in
That's a fun
That's going to do it for us here on NBA Today. George Stano's in for me tomorrow.